I'm Tara Brooke, I'm 27 years old and I am a moderator for CaMKIN for the Cheshire and Merseyside Kidney Information Network, and I have been dealing with kidney disease for about 10 years now, and I've had a transplant for 5 years. I was diagnosed by chance, I suppose, when I was 18, so I was just in university and I was having really bad problems with my tonsils, actually, completely unrelated. So I went to go and have them out and they were like, wow, you know, your blood pressure is really terrible, like really terrible. You must be terrified. I was like, no, I'm fine. No, I'm actually fine. And actually they were like, oh, you know, go and see your GP, maybe just get some blood tests done. Really blasé, not really concerned. I get thrown into the doctor's office and she did some urine tests and she did some blood tests and she was like, oh, be your kidneys, but it's probably nothing to worry about. And within 5 hours, I had a phone call, and then 48 hours after that, I was in the Royal for a week. And they didn't tell me what was going on. I had several biopsies, and what came to fruition was that I was actually in stage 4 chronic kidney disease due to an autoimmune disease called IgA Nephropathy. It was completely out of the blue. Not expected at all. And I think when you're 18, there's a lot of stuff going on anyway. You know, I was preparing to go to university. I was, you know, I had relationships to juggle. I was still living at home. And I think that it completely took me by surprise, and it was a really difficult time, and I was in denial and I didn't know where to turn for information, and I felt incredibly isolated. I think that's the best way to describe it. Was that in my head, I was the only 18-year-old in the world that was suffering, and there was nobody else that understood or I could relate to. And I found that really tricky. And even moving forward from that, it took me a long time to be able to kind of accept it, deal with it, process it, and move on a little bit. I had at that point, about 27% function. And any kidney patient knows that the level of deterioration can vary massively. He said 5 to 10 years, and it was actually 2. So within 2 years, I'd gone from 28% function down to about 13. So I'd gone into kidney failure. And there was a planned transplant from my dad. I felt that it was going to be, you know, a completely new start, and I could just continue on with my life as I had meant to. Unfortunately, it didn't go well. It was a bit of a disaster, to be honest, and it ended up with me having to commence dialysis full time. I'd had a really tough 18 months on dialysis. I'd settled on a in-centre, on a home machine. It was too unstable to go home, unfortunately. And actually, I preferred being in-centre because it got me out of the house. My life was wake up, do dialysis, come home, go to sleep. So at least when I got out of the house, I got to speak to people and see people. And, you know, when my parents are at work all day, you just sit on the sofa like an amoeba and not move. So it was nice to get out, and I did my own treatment. I don't know what it was, but I could not settle on dialysis. So in-centre didn't really work for me. I got really unwell. I did peritoneal dialysis, so through your abdomen. That didn't really work. Ended up, you know, in ITU numerous times, intensive care. Just lived in hospital. I think in 1 year, I probably spent about 250 days in hospital, to the point where I pretty much had my own bed. I had my own side cupboard. I put snacks in there. I think my longest stay was 3.5 weeks. And that was my life. It was either dialysis or I was an inpatient. I'm very lucky to have had the opportunity to have a second transplant, about 18 months after the first. It was a difficult road to kind of get there. I was very unwell for a long period of time, but I had a second transplant from my stepmom through the pooled pair scheme. It's essentially like a swap scheme for kidneys. So people throughout the country are in pairs and they're not good matches for their person. So you go into a big pool and you might find somebody else that's a better match for you. So someone always donates, someone always receives, and you just get this swap and share scheme. I got a transplant from an anonymous donor, who I'm very grateful for. And unfortunately, again, I had some complications after surgery. It was a bit of a rough recovery, a bit of a rough ride. But eventually, you know, went and left the hospital with a transplant. And although it was a tricky recovery and, lots of different issues occurred, it was successful. And actually now I'm on the other side of it, and it's difficult to look back about how kind of traumatic that time was between the first and the second transplant, but I am on the other side of it, and I do live a very, very all-encompassing life in terms of I will do anything that I can get my hands on. So whether that's still climbing, I'm out in the mountains, I'm traveling, I'm on expedition, I take people on these fantastic adventures that they would never usually have. I've taken teams to Thailand, to Costa Rica, to Morocco and Cambodia. I'm taking some children diving this year, and we're doing some elephant conservation in Thailand. And travel has always been a massive part for me. I think at the point where you're diagnosed, when you're in kidney disease, other than requiring a little bit of extra insurance and just chatting it over with your team, there is absolutely, generally, no reason why you can't go away. Just making sure that you have everything in place. People have transplants all across the world. It's not just the UK, particularly places like, in Europe that have excellent transplant systems. There is absolutely no reason that you couldn't go abroad. And things do happen. People get infections, people get sick, and there's always something there so that you're looked after. And I don't think that should be a reason to not go away. You've got this transplant, you may as well use it and see some really cool things while you do it. I first got involved with CaMKIN about 5 years ago, which is when the inception of CaMKIN, the Cheshire and Merseyside version, came along into the picture. And I was kind of offered to be a part of that, and I thought that was really interesting. And we've grown from me opening the Facebook page 5 years ago all the way up to 500 members now. And CaMKIN provides this kind of community aspect, and there's people from a plethora of ages all across the kind of Cheshire and Merseyside area. And what's nice is that if you connect with someone, you can go and meet up. They're not millions of miles away, they're local, they've probably got the same clinic as you potentially. What it does is it has that safe space. So I feel like people can post when they're dealing with an issue or upset or need some advice. It's an open place. It's not going to get lost amongst, thousands of people. It's, 500 people, and everybody on there is super supportive and in a range of different stages, and including family and friends as well. And I think as a moderator, my job is to make sure that everybody is kind of safe and happy, and that if people need information, especially people that need information quickly, are signposted to the correct source. And that can just be people on the group, or it could be a clinician, or it could be a dietitian, etc. So it's about providing really good, secure information for people so that they feel in touch with the community, but also they know where to go when they need help.